Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second industry webinar for the AAM and RPAS Strategic Regulatory Roadmap. Before we do get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm joining you today and their continuing connection to land, water and community. For me, this is the Kaurna people. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people who are in attendance today. So my name is Rebecca Custer. I work in the Emerging Technologies team at CASA. So in a late change since the Human Ticks invite was released, I'll be filling in for Andrew Ward today, and I'll be co-moderating this webinar with Mr. Greg Tyrrell. Greg is the Executive Director, Australian Association for Uncrewed Systems, and also the co-chair of the biannual Roadmap TWG. A reminder to everyone that this session is being recorded. You can expect to hear today from a range of CASA subject matter experts throughout the first 45 minutes or so of the session, which will be followed by some answers to questions provided by members of the biannual Roadmap TWG. A number of QR codes will be included in the presentation today, so you may want to have your phone handy for these, but we'll also be providing the links in the chat. The high number of attendees precludes online interaction today, but we do encourage you to please reach out to your TWG industry representatives to provide feedback to us on what you hear today during the presentations. So the session today is going to provide an update on the regulatory safety priority initiatives underway and committed to by CASA under the RPAS and AAM regulatory roadmap. The roadmap was originally published in 2022 and reviewed in consultation with industry in late 2024. So you may have noted that we have been regularly updating our roadmap website with the latest status of upcoming and current activities. We do hope that today provides some greater insights into the work being prioritised, delivered or on its way to you. It is important to note that the roadmap sets the priorities for CASA to deliver the policies and guidance projected to be needed by industry and when they could be expected to be developed. The roadmap does not expect to solve all of the policy questions that the RPAS and AAM industry will need answered. Those answers might be developed by the release of documents for consultation or specific technical working groups already underway or yet to be formed across the timelines set out in the roadmap. These twice yearly sessions were an initiative of the 2024 Roadmap Review Industry TWG that Greg was a member of. So I'll now hand over to Greg and he can tell you a bit more about them.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great to be here. The purpose of these sessions are to ensure that CASA more regularly is providing updates to industry on the roadmap, in particular what work is underway and what CASA's priorities are. The sessions also aim to foster more regular feedback from industry. I encourage you, following the session today, to seek out your TWG representatives and provide them your feedback. There is a follow-up industry TWG where my industry colleagues and I have the opportunity to work with CASA to determine whether activity prioritisation needs review to address industry feedback. Our industry association AAUS also provides mechanisms for its members to engage on a wide range of areas with the AAUS team, who can also make sure the feedback gets to the right parts of CASA. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Jackie, who's going to provide an update on operations and people.
Thanks very much, Greg and Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Smith, Manager of RPAS Policy and Regulation Section. We're responsible for the development and amendment of CASA's RPAS policies, the Part 101 framework and manual of standards, and the safety cases that underpin these, as well as the guidance material and a number of approving and exempting instruments. And we work really closely with all of the presenters online today and their teams. Today, I'll provide an update on the initiatives covered in the first webinar earlier this year, progress on a number of new initiatives, and touch on how we inform and prioritise our work program and how this work program aligns with and adapts to competing priorities and balancing all of our stakeholder expectations, in particular the initiatives in the roadmap. We also have Scott Duffy, Manager of RPAS Operations, joining us today, and he will cover the updates on service delivery timeframes, beyond visual line of sight operations, and changes to support increased efficiency for training and licensing with medium RPA. And David Peterson, also joining us, will provide an update on large RPA matters a little later as well. So how does CASA prioritise its work plan, and why might roadmap items and their timeframes shift? So CASA's RPAS priorities and work plans are informed by a variety of information streams, like guiding and governing directives and plans and other forces that require us to allocate resources and time to service those things. Each year we undertake a continuous cycle of data collection, work program planning, implementation, delivery and review, and amendments to ensure that what we're attending to change meets certain criteria to support the longer term objectives of an outcome-based regulatory framework and reform. We look at a number of things when prioritising and planning, and please note that what's listed here doesn't cover all of it. We assess the aviation safety context first and foremost, the benefit to industry and the number of participants the change would affect, the time and resources the change might require, how that change aligns with the Minister's and Director of Aviation Safety's expectations, our service delivery improvement, community service improvement, as well as enabling future operations that are not yet embedded. You may not see all of the work that we do behind the scenes or know about some of the enabling initiatives that CASA is progressing. For example, we've been working really closely with the state and territory police forces and have issued exemption instruments to enable and support police emergencies and operations where drones can be used indoors. The benefit of using drones in these scenarios are to help the community, but also to protect the officers and agency members by reducing exposure to more risky environments. The success of that indoor trial exemption has supported expanding that approval to a number of additional fire and emergency and community service agencies. And it's also the basis for alleviations that would permit law enforcement and those agencies to operate RPA over and near people during an emergency or related operation, which we're currently working on. So this work, it's really crucial to enabling our Australian Fire and Rescue Services in the 2025-26 summer season, among other services such as surf lifesaving, search and rescue, national parks and wildlife, and marine and water vehicle rescue. Another key item, program of work is the ICAO program. As a founding member state and signatory to the Chicago Convention, CASA also needs to plan and prioritise resourcing to align with the International Civil Aviation Organisation's standards and recommended practices. And these provide for an internationally consistent performance and guidance standard as developed and agreed by the member states and other stakeholders. ICAO, RPAS and emerging technology standards, they will need to be implemented over the coming few years, and this package of work requires quite a long lead time. We've also seen a number of completed initiatives that are delivering and will continue to deliver improved efficiency for industry already in 2025. However, some of our planned initiatives have been delayed or paused so that we can focus on other items identified since our planning phase. For example, the Police and Emergency Services Instrument, as I just mentioned. Instrument renewals, guidance material, website updates, internal and external reporting, of which there is a lot of reporting, industry communications, inquiries and other matters also take time and resourcing to service and address. As a government organisation and a regulator, all of these requirements are really important and they are must-dos, and we always have a plan, but we do need to remain flexible to adapt and pivot for other emerging priorities as they arise. Okay, so SORA, an update on our integration and guidance work, which is continuing to progress. CASA is intending to release a tailored SORA framework document containing the application and assessment process of the CASA Australian version of SORA 2.5 by the end of this year, with guidance and more detail to be released through to Q6 of 2026. As an example of this framework for a practical application, CASA will be basing the assessment processes off the operational safety objectives of the JARIS version 2.5 by the end of 2025. The supplemental guidance and acceptable means of compliance will be published through to Q2 of 2026, and this guidance will be for operations at the Sale 4 level and below. For assisted visual line of sight, we're continuing to progress establishment of a trial that would permit a person to use an observer under certain conditions when operating an RPA without CASA approval. This trial would initially be open to ReOC and RePL holders and may remove the need for extended visual line of sight Class 1 and 2 applications and approvals. There's been a slight delay with this initiative, but we are anticipating to release more information and guidance by the end of this year and implementation within Q1 of 2026. The trial arrangements may be extended to recreational flyers with some modifications depending on the success and the feedback of the trial participants and any other aviation safety related matters if they arise. Operations over and near people, we are continuing to work on the amendments to that temporary management instruction and their pathways. The changes are refining and clarifying some of the existing pathways and also introduces 2 new pathways to make it clearer and easier for operators to identify and apply using the most appropriate pathway for your operation. The safety cases that supports these pathways is robust and quite detailed, which is taking longer than first anticipated to settle. However, this work is important to get right and it will support increased efficiency and streamlining for a number of RPAS operations and CASA assessment, ultimately reducing assessment time. We anticipate another progress update will be released by the end of 2025 and implementation by the end of Q1 2026. For shielded operations, CASA's developing an exemption approach that would support RPAS operations that are within 150 metres laterally of a structure to operate up to 31 metres above the top of that structure, even if it is higher than 400 feet, without a CASA approval. We're anticipating to release this soon, as soon as possible, but by Q1 of 2026. And this proposal will also assist RPAS operations in mining sites. The Roadmap Initiative OP6 for dangerous goods and RPAS operations was slated to be released by the end of 2025. We're anticipating release of this guidance material for public consultation by the end of the year, or at the very latest by the end of February 2026. This is because we have a high volume of consultation scheduled for crewed and uncrewed initiatives later this year, which means we need to prioritise and schedule those consultation packages. And we really appreciate your patience as we work through this approach, keeping in mind my first slide around shifting priorities and how we manage these. The research and development discussion paper was delayed further from its initial and subsequent target date, but I'm pleased to say that this has been released for public consultation on Monday. The research and development pathways for uncrewed aircraft operations discussion paper will be open for approximately 8 weeks and it closes on the 9th of December. The discussion paper provides an outline of the key areas of the framework that's already enabling RPAS R&D operations currently. It highlights the work that's in progress that's aimed at improving the flexibility of this framework and improving the R&D pathways for industry. And it provides a proposal for further amendment to the excluded category to improve flexibility, not just for R&D operations, but more broadly. And it also considers how sandboxes and flight testing are supported under this framework. We are seeking your feedback on a range of topics in the discussion paper, so please make sure that you have your say. You can find the discussion paper on the consultation hub on the CASA website, and there is a QR code there that you can scan. And finally, for medium RPA, due to resourcing changes and a few shifting priorities, the release of the technical working group recommendations for a comprehensive flight test for medium RPA category licenses, it has been delayed. This initiative will require additional focus and implementation planning, MOS drafting and other key information before we can release it for public consultation. The original timeframe was actually slightly ambitious. We're now aiming to release that material for consultation in the middle of 2026. We are, however, progressing changes to remove the requirement for ReOC holders to display the medium RPA model on the certificate. This will mean a reduction in administrative changes for ReOC holders as well as for CASA, and this is anticipated to be rolled out for implementation within Q1 of 2026. Scott Duffy, he'll provide a further update on the changes to the medium RPA training organisations and how we're improving efficiency for them. And David Peterson, he will provide an update on the large RPA matters later in this webinar. Thanks everyone. I'll now hand you over to Scott Duffy, Manager of RPAS Operations. Cheers.
Thanks, Jacqueline, for the update, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Duffy, the Manager of RPAS Operations team, and I'm responsible for the RPAS-related oversight functions, mainly regulatory services applications and the conduct of surveillance events. And today I'll be taking you through a few updates on CASA's RPAS service delivery statistics and the recent rollout of the broad area BV loss process and the Chief REPL Instructor Initiative. In early 2025, CASA commenced releasing service delivery information across a variety of regulations, including CASA Part 101, which covers RPAS. CASA has 17 statistics related to RPAS, and these are grouped by similar activities and complexities, such as 3 nautical miles and above 400 feet, which fall under CASA Part 101.030, relating to area approvals. And now that CASA publishes statistics for all its regulatory services it provides, we will move to a periodic review of those performance markers. And one of the key statistics, RPAS statistics, relates to complex RPAS operations such as BV loss. And this target was initially set at 300 days. And after some recent feedback and a review by CASA, that target day went from 300 down to 180. And over the most recent quarter, the performance improved to 78%, noting over the last 6 months, it was 60%, and over the longer term trend of 12 months, it was 59% of the 180 days. So in addition to the target date, we are also providing the median target, which is more indicative of the current processing timeframes of applications on foot. And you'll see that we're performing really quite well. The median timeframe varies directly with the number of factors, such as number of applications that we have on foot, and also with the quality of submission of applications we receive from industry. And if we're required to engage with applicants, there can be delays in their response being sent to CASA, and this can also extend out the processing timeframes. In these situations, we do progress other applications, but as you can appreciate, these factors will impact median processing timeframes. We understand that some of these timeframes are still lengthy, and CASA is pleased to advise that we are introducing initiatives aiming at assisting the RPAS sector and improving consistency and reducing assessment timeframes. Also, as CASA service catalogue expands, the RPAS team is seeking clarification from operators that submit applications if they intend to combine approvals, as from time to time they will require the applicant to make minor changes to their procedures. This ensures the approval and the processes are fit for the proposed operations. And before we move on to the next slide, please take a moment to click on the QR code and it will take you to CASA service delivery statistics on CASA's website. Okay, moving on. Broad area BV loss. CASA noted that there was a significant increase in the number of BV loss applications with similar operational risk profiles. And the team felt that this created an opportunity to come up with a better approach to managing BV loss applications. And I'm pleased to announce that a few weeks ago, CASA rolled out the TMI enabling broad area BV loss. This initiative introduces 4 pathways to support Australia-wide BV loss approvals for ReOC holders. More details can be found by clicking on the QR code or by searching the CASA website for TMI Broad Area BV Loss 2025-03. And the key benefits to this TMI are it opens up larger operating areas for ReOC holders without them having to submit case-by-case applications where it aligns with the criteria. And some of those criteria are the ReOC holder must nominate a responsible person employed by the ReOC to conduct and oversee specific area assessments under their documented practices and procedures. The trial excludes operating areas within 10 nautical miles of a controlled aerodrome and operations above 400 feet AGL, unless that's over an active mine site. The trial does support emergency services operations in reduced visibility and low cloud conditions. And operators will be required to report data back to CASA throughout the trial period. We anticipate the trial running for a period of up to 12 months from the date of commencement, and it's anticipated that CASA will conduct a post-implementation review with feedback actively sought from participants. And if you have a current BVLOS application sitting with CASA, please note the team are making contact with those operators to establish if they wish to transition to the broad area options. And finally, I am pleased to announce the trial commences today, Wednesday, the 15th of October, 2025. If you'd like to take a minute and click on the QR code, it will take you to the TMI. Moving on to the medium RPA initiative. Over the past 18 months, we've seen a noticeable increase in activity in the medium RPA space. And similar to what we've seen with BVLOS applications, this growth has led to longer assessment timeframes. To help address this, we identified an opportunity to make the process more efficient for both industry and CASA, ultimately making it faster for you to gain access to REPL training on new medium RPA models. And as a result, we've rolled out a streamlined processing initiative that focuses on two key areas. Firstly, we've removed the requirement for a chief REPL instructor to undergo a flight test on each new medium RPA model, provided the training organization has been previously assessed by CASA for a specific medium RPA category, such as multi-rotor up to 150 kilos. And secondly, we have refined our internal ReOC variation process specifically for medium RPA training so that these applications can progress more quickly. I am pleased to advise that the team has been in contact with eligible operators, and we have seen a positive uptake in this initiative. And over the coming months, we'll continue to monitor the outcomes, gather feedback, and look at further opportunities in the medium RPA space. And if you're a training organization or intend on becoming one and would like some more information about this initiative, please reach out to us on the Contact Us page by clicking on the QR code. I will now hand you over to Dave Peterson. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. David Peterson is my name. I'm the Manager of Airworthiness Emerging Technologies within the Airworthiness Engineering branch of CASA. And I have the opportunity to give you a few updates today on some of the things we're doing from the airworthiness approval and certification side of things in relation to both RPAS, UASs, and also advanced air mobility aircraft, so powered lift eVTOL platforms intended ultimately for commercial air transport. So moving along. So certainly been a busy few months. It does seem to never end. The first of the developments I'd like to bring to your attention, it's a very positive one. It's involved quite a lot of work from some various people within airworthiness engineering, and that's the publication in June 2025 of a document called the National Aviation Authorities, or NAA Network, Roadmap on Advanced Air Mobility Type Certification and Acceptance. And so essentially the NAA network is a collaboration of 5 like-minded regulatory authorities from around the globe, Australia of course, and CASA being the regulator, the CAA New Zealand, the CAA UK from the United Kingdom, Transport Canada, and the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States. So these 5 regulatory authorities are working together to harmonise and streamline their approaches to the certification, validation and acceptance of advanced air mobility aircraft. So we're talking large, powered lift, type certificated aircraft intended for commercial air transport applications. Many of you will have seen examples of these aircraft in the media, examples such as Joby and Vida, Vertical Aerospace in the UK, and AMSL Aero in Australia, who has a powered lift aircraft under development as well. The roadmap that's been agreed between the 5 authorities and was launched in a coordinated manner across all 5 nations sets forward some unified and strategic approaches to a number of different areas relating to AAM type certification. The first is a unified approach to safety and innovation that tries to balance our desire for consistent and high safety standards with recognition of technological advancements and innovation and responding to that. The second is a harmonised approach to type certification through the use of performance-based measures, seeking convergence on detail level technical requirements between differing authorities where differences occur, and adopting and promulgating mutually agreed and accepted means of compliance, which will allow industry to achieve streamlined certification outcomes and allow their aeronautical product to move in a more harmonised and easy way from one authority to another authority. The third objective is collaboration and alignment. We are working together to collaborate with one another on type certification projects, sharing information between regulatory authorities as required so we can approach the certification of these aircraft consistently. Related to that, and I think recognising that no single aviation authority in the world has all of the answers, and we know that, we're developing a collaborative approach for the first time to multi-authority certification and validation. And what we're doing there is we're leveraging opportunities between the different regulatory authorities to collaborate on the type validation, particularly of a state of design's aircraft, in a manner that allows us to use our resources more efficiently between authorities. And that's something that we absolutely need to do in order to balance this priority with other regulatory objectives. We're taking an incremental approach in relation to AAM roadmap, a crawl, walk, run, so to speak, building initially on piloted AAM, then looking into the future as to what the prospective standards and certification requirements should be for remote piloted air mobility aircraft, and ultimately into the domain of limited and then eventually full autonomy. So we're taking a progressive and measured approach to those challenges. Lastly, this will be underpinned, as it already is to an extent with many of our authorities with one another, with a series of inclusive bilateral agreements between authorities. These agreements do take time to negotiate, and particularly the technical implementing procedures that underpin those agreements also take time to negotiate. But ultimately, we're looking at a longer-term program of updating and refreshing our bilateral agreements with authorities such as the FAA, the United Kingdom and so on, to ensure that we have specific and identified pathways for type certification and type validation in a streamlined way for these AAM aircraft. So all of this is good news for people seeking to bring AAM aircraft into the country, and also for OEMs or manufacturers of AAM aircraft or components of AAM aircraft who are domiciled and based in Australia. So a lot of work has been involved, but that's been a really, really pleasing initiative. Secondary to that, at a more detailed level, CASA is also preparing some technical guidance material in relation to the certification of piloted AAM aircraft, largely in alignment with the powered lift certification requirements that the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, published in finalised form earlier in the year. So that addresses roadmap items 2A and 2B in relation to type certification. Second area in which we've been very busy, taking a little bit longer, unfortunately, than we had hoped, but nothing's ever as easy as one thinks, is the publication of guidance material relating to the cybersecurity assurance of remote piloted aircraft systems, the airworthiness cybersecurity assurance. I'm pleased to let you know that CASA has now prepared an advisory circular. It'll be AC 2157 on airworthiness cybersecurity for RPAS. That document is going through a couple of rounds of internal coordination, particularly intergovernmentally, because as you would appreciate, cybersecurity is a cross portfolio responsibility. So we are working with other government agencies to ensure that our very specific guidance material for the design of RPAs and the maintenance of their cybersecurity is aligned with broader government messaging in relation to cybersecurity more generally. We are expecting to get very soon to public consultation. I know it's taken longer than many of us, including myself, might have hoped, but we're pretty confident that we can get to public consultation in this quarter, and that will expose the information in this AC to industry, and we really hope that it will be of some use, particularly to the designers of larger and more complex RPAs, and that is certainly the direction in which we are heading currently and in the years ahead. So good news on that. That's AA1, the item. Relatedly, also in the airworthiness space for RPAS, we have a couple of initiatives, AA4A, which relates to the development at a high level of policy pathways and policy positions for the certification of RPAS, and AA5, which relates to the development of more fit for purpose continuing airworthiness or maintenance related arrangements for RPAS, particularly larger RPAS. We have a number of policy proposals that are in development and that are working their way through this development process. I just want to bring a couple of them in particular to your attention. The first is a proposal to amend Part 101 in relation to the requirements that are currently in Part 101, which is 101.255 and related regulations, for large RPAs, so RPAs above 150 kilos maximum takeoff weight, to hold a certificate of airworthiness. There are requirements at the moment in relation to either a restricted C of A or an experimental certificate. As some of you who operate or seek to operate in this space will understand, experimental certificates are not always appropriate to particularly commercial or more commercially oriented operations. And we also recognise that the requirements for certificates of airworthiness may not always be necessary or appropriate, even when an RPA is large, particularly when it's operated in areas of lower air risk and ground risk. And the SORA model, the SAIL approach in the SORA model, already to an extent accounts for that different operational or ConOps situation. So we have developed proposals which we are advancing through government for a proposed amendment to Part 101 of CASA to deliver a greater flexibility where we'll be able to switch on and off these requirements for Cs of A subject to the circumstances for the proposed operation. We think this will do a lot to unlock the greater level of use of large RPA, particularly in situations where these RPAs represent low air risk and ground risk, which is what we're trying to approach at the moment. The second item that relates to AA5, which is the development of fit-for-purpose approaches for the continuing airworthiness, particularly for larger RPAs, is a proposed amendment to a CAO 100.24 that will seek to broaden out the mechanisms for the issuances of maintenance permissions relating to large RPA. So you will be aware under Part 101, the current requirements are that large RPA need to be maintained as a Class B aircraft in accordance with maintenance authorities or maintenance permissions that exist in the core CAR and CASA frameworks, such as the Part 66 licenses and so on. We are developing pathways for greater levels of flexibility in relation to those arrangements in terms of how those arrangements can be issued and the competencies that will be associated when determining whether an individual can be issued with maintenance authorities for large RPA operations and for maintenance of those operations. Related to that, we are updating at the moment, concurrent with this proposal, guidance material in AC 101-01 for remotely piloted aircraft in relation to the maintenance or continuing airworthiness aspects, specifically for large RPA 150 kilograms and above. And that will support and align with the proposed legislative changes in the 100.24 instrument. So these will develop, these will progress into consultation, and as soon as we can get these into force, we will get them into force, as they will provide greater flexibility and greater alleviation as appropriate to industry, and we're very keen to progress those arrangements. Lastly, I just want to talk on, I think we all recognise, certainly I recognise from where I sit in this organisation, there is an increasing appetite within industry to operate increasingly large RPAs at increasingly high sail levels, so increasingly complex air risk and ground risk environments in the form of higher sail level operations. We have a roadmap item, AA6, that currently is due, I believe, mid next year. That's the current deadline, in relation to the publication of guidance related to the evidence requirements for the airworthiness operational safety objectives under SORA. As many of you will be aware, as you move to higher sail levels, more airworthiness objectives become engaged under SORA, and they become engaged to higher levels of robustness, and that means a greater level of technical detail and substantiation being required by the applicant when applying for the operation. We are currently developing guidance material for a number of what we see as the most important of those airworthiness OSOs for the higher sail levels. We are also exploring opportunities to try to get guidance out and to industry in an incremental manner rather than in a big bang single delivery, noting that the 2026 timeframe is the allotted timeframe for this roadmap item currently. We are working pretty hard at the moment on guidance materials, particularly in relation to OSO 4, which is Airworthiness Design Standards, which is engaged for sail operations at sail 4 and above, and OSO 5, which are the system safety and reliability analysis objectives, which are engaged for sail operations of sail 3 and above. These are two key areas where industry come to us and say that they need further information, they need to understand what CASA needs to see. We are working with a number of applicants at sail 3 and sail 4 level in a collegiate way to understand how they're representing their safety cases, what information they need, and we are using that to tailor the guidance in a manner that we hope will be amenable to the challenges of industry as a whole. So we're very much looking forward to getting these guidance products out the door because we recognise the importance of this guidance to you. So they are a few different airworthiness updates. It's been a busy time. We work very closely with other areas of CASA, such as Jackie and Scott and these teams. And yeah, we're looking forward to continuing to support you in industry in these higher sail level operations in particular and large RPAs. Thank you. I will hand over to Will Whitelaw in relation to the airspace and UTM update. Thank you, Will.
Thanks, David. So I'm Will Whitelaw, a senior RPAS specialist. I work in the emerging technologies and reg change area at CASA, and I'll be sharing some updates around work happening around initial UTM, as well as some updates on the Australian Future Airspace Framework, or AFAF, on behalf of the Office of Airspace Regulation. So for initial deployment progress around UTM, CASA and our services are continuing to work closely with industry to deliver the foundations for Australia's UTM, including the rollout of the Flight Information Management System, or FIMS. It's a complex program that requires a learn as we go approach. And so this means that some aspects may change at short notice. So Air Services and CASA will endeavour to publish updates as soon as possible as these occur. Our focus continues to be on delivering a safe, consistent and practical framework that supports both industry growth and aviation safety. In terms of current progress, our first item on the list will be new data sources in the form of FIMS. Transitioning to FIMS data will help improve consistency and reliability across apps. Next is auto authorization expansion. So everyone has probably seen the 10 airport trial, which is enabling auto authorization at those aerodromes. This will be expanded to all civil controlled aerodromes once FIMS goes live. Next is the safety assurance focus. We'll continue to strengthen assurance through automated testing of apps, which will support app providers and support the scale for UTM. We'll be using a repeatable framework, developing this framework which provides a fair, scalable, repeatable, and align as closely as possible with international UTM and ATM developments. Our international engagement is maintaining global engagement with partners to ensure that Australia remains consistent with best practices and harmonisation efforts. We continue to support our drone safety app ecosystem, including a coexistence period to ensure overlap in services as new data sources are introduced and providers onboard or transition. Manual approvals will remain available as a permanent alternative where automated processes do not yet exist or are not appropriate. And finally, streamlining of regulatory services. We will continue to, where possible, prioritise low-hanging fruit to deliver practical industry benefits within the available resources. Looking ahead, Air Services, working closely with Frequentis and the initial USS cohort, are adjusting the FIMS rollout schedule. The launch is now planned for 2026, allowing additional time for validation and assurance activities. This deliberate adjustment will help ensure seamless integration with existing systems and processes and the delivery of a product that's both industry ready and practical. Air Services will share more details on the next steps and revised milestones soon and has committed to providing regular progress updates via its website. As well as this, CASA will also be contributing to the update of the UTM action plan in collaboration with the department to ensure alignment with the revised FIMS schedule and broader UTM policy directions. CASA and Air Services will continue to engage openly with industry, recognising that collaboration is key to ensuring that UTM framework is practical, globally aligned and delivers real value for both the operators and wider aviation community. And now for an update on the Australian Future Airspace Framework, or AFAF. This aims to proactively manage novel airspace demands that will arise as emerging technologies are integrated into the Australian administered airspace. The AFAF is designed to ensure our airspace continues to be safe, efficient, and equitably accessible into the future. It provides a structured and forward-looking approach to managing change, helping us anticipate and address new challenges before they emerge. The framework's being delivered through 3 volumes, which will be progressively released over the next 15 months. Volume 1 establishes the foundational guidance, including governance framework, overarching goals and guiding principles for managing Australian administered airspace. Volume 2 sets out the evidence and risk-based process for strategic airspace monitoring and assessment, which is used to identify where changes are needed to enhance safety, efficiency and access. And Volume 3 describes a desired end state of Australian airspace, along with the plan for realising this vision and a record of the steps taken to achieve it. Importantly, industry's got an opportunity to contribute to this. You can help define how safety, efficiency and equitable access should be measured. If you'd like to be part of that discussion, please reach out to your AFAF Technical Working Group representative by following the QR code on the screen. Thank you, and I'll hand you back to Rebecca.
Thanks for that, Will. Okay, so that concludes the presentations from our subject matter experts with updates on the latest work in train and being delivered. Before we move to questions, we just wanted to let you know that we have recently published a series of news stories to answer the questions that you raised with us for the webinar, the equivalent webinar that was held in May. So the stories have updates against the key themes from the questions that you asked. So 4 articles have been published. The first one, Preparing for Safe AAM Operations in Australia, has the latest updates on licensing for piloted AAM aircraft and the support for vertiport planning and design. The second one, Shaping Future Drone Rules, outlines how CASA works with first-of-type applicants to test new ideas and develop rules that are safe and practical. The Supporting Safe and Scalable Drone Operations story covers quite a few topics of interest to the May audience and I think also today's audience, including the review of the SORA framework in line with the introduction of SORA version 2.5, the work being done in conjunction with an industry TWG to streamline approvals for medium drones, progress on a more flexible pathway for the airworthiness of large drones. Also, some of these are mentioned today as well with further updates. And a 2026 assisted VLOS trial to support first-person view flying. Finally, Shaping the Future of Australian Airspace story addresses questions on the AFAF that you just heard the latest update from Will on, planning for vertiport operations, exploring next steps for ADSB, assessing airspace change needs, and the work that we are supporting for Air Services introduction of themes. So for today's session, we reached out to the Roadmap Technical Working Group, who have provided some questions that we will now address. I'll hand over to Greg, who will be asking these questions to us on industry's behalf in the remaining time available.
Thanks, Rebecca. The first question is to you, actually. The RPAS and AAM roadmap sets ambitious timelines for regulatory reform and operational frameworks that are critical to industry confidence and investment. Is CASA resourced adequately to meet the roadmap's commitments on time?
Thanks, Greg. Look, I think it's fair to say that CASA and all of us operate in an environment of change. So when we did do the roadmap review, we did our best to plan ahead, and the work areas agreed to roadmap timelines that we thought, were our best guess of what we could meet. But neither the CASA workforce or our work program or even industry's priorities remain static. Things change. So as you will have seen from the presentations today, some work is reprioritised to meet emerging or changing needs. The roadmap deliverables are managed within this environment. However, what we do try to do is to undertake to and follow through to report to industry on updates more regularly. So we've been doing this both via the website and through forums such as this webinar. We have also had discussions with the technical working group around the procedures for managing roadmap activity changes in consultation with them. Hopefully this addresses your question.
Thanks, Rebecca. Question for Scott. Timeliness of regulatory services remains a major concern for industry. What steps is CASA taking to improve efficiency and predictability in its regulatory processes, and how is this being prioritised within the broader roadmap agenda?
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate the question. So the published timeframes that were discussed a little bit earlier in the webinar do reflect the full life cycle of an application from CASA's receipt to completion, including time taken by industry to respond to CASA's queries. We're continuing to refine those metrics as more data becomes available, with effort underway to distinguish CASA's processing times from industry's processing times. That's obviously going to be key moving forward in the future with these targets. But also to ensure that CASA is efficient and effective with our resources, we are attempting to group similar tasks for staff, such as complex and non-complex. This creates efficiency when staff are doing multiple applications of a similar type, and we have seen a significant reduction in overall delays linked to processing of assessments. So we have seen some positive outcomes there. And also, as you would have heard today on several fronts, CASA is working to enable the RPAS industry to undertake its own risk assessment, thus removing the need for CASA to approve every single job. So that's another positive step. In terms of prioritisation, earlier in the presentation today, Jackie did provide a good overview of the many factors considered, and please note that we do discuss the prioritisations with the biannual roadmap technical working group also. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thanks, Scott. Cheers. A question for Jackie. The introduction of the broad area BVLOS framework is an encouraging step forward towards scalable operations. Do you see scope for a lighter, more risk proportionate regulatory approach in future, and what types of operations or approvals might they apply to?
Thanks, Greg. That's an excellent question. And just like Scotty mentioned, and also in his presentation about that broad area work, it is really excellent to see, and we definitely do want to continue to move into that risk proportionate regulatory approach in the future. That's definitely where we want to head, to be more flexible and outcome based. So the work that we undertake and all of our programs of work, it always is focusing on that outcome and looking where we can remove those touch points and CASA approvals and maintain aviation safety. So it's just a matter of working through those supporting safety cases and looking at where we can remove or reduce that regulatory touch point or approval step. But when we're going through that process, we really need to make sure that we're considering in that process the safety regulations and what that regulation might control and the risks, and then not deliberately remove that without considering that risk, looking at different ways that we could control it, whether it is pushing that responsibility back onto industry and being more flexible in that approach. So I think generally it's the risk to other aircraft at the moment that we're struggling with the most in terms of those lower altitude operations, and that's not as easy to push out those broader BVLOS operational approvals, so for instance in the agricultural sector. So that's one of the areas that we really want to focus on and push out that risk proportionate regulatory approach to. So that's definitely one of those areas. But as we mature and industry matures, we know that we can control these risks in better ways. It's just a matter of working through what those operations are, testing those risks and those controls, and satisfying ourselves that we can maintain aviation safety or improve it where relevant. So we're working on it.
Thanks, Jackie. You did touch on air risk there, and this next question is to Will. The government is currently consulting on an ADSB mandate. How is CASA coordinating its RPAS and AAM roadmap with broader national airspace management reforms, including any expansion of ADSB, to ensure consistent risk-based integration across crewed and uncrewed aviation?
Thanks, Greg. To outline the steps from here, following the public consultation, ADSB cross-agency working group would consider the feedback and provide a recommendation to government. Any outcomes from that consultation would need to be considered for many of the roadmap activities, in addition to broader national airspace reform, like the AFAF, which is risk and evidence-based. Operational and airworthiness activities may also need to consider the outcomes in forward planning. In relation to coordination, CASA sits on several cross-agency and industry working groups that progress airspace and airspace adjacent initiatives, including UTM, the AFAF and the ADSB working group. We also regularly liaise at the working level on the status of activities and initiatives, including those intersecting with the roadmap. So hopefully that answers the question.
Terrific. Thanks, Will. And for our industry viewers out there, I please recommend you go and respond to that ADSB mandate consultation. All right, question for Rebecca. Does CASA intend for sandboxes to be broader than uncrewed aircraft, and will CASA's strategic priority interest be made available?
Thanks, Greg. So I'm assuming that this question is in relation to the recently released R&D paper that Jackie spoke about. So yes, that paper is largely focused on RPAS activities. However, we believe that reg sandboxes can be beneficial across many areas of aviation, including beyond uncrewed aircraft. So basically, we think that new and emerging technologies do fit the intent of sandboxes to test and understand the regulatory and safety impact of novel products, not just products, but services and concepts, and they can help identify and assess new risks. So the regulatory areas of priority where we think that can benefit from real-world trials. Some of these were identified in that R&D discussion paper, and we will consider future areas where we think that there's value and utility in a similar approach to support and complement our safety objectives. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, it does. Thanks, Rebecca. And that ends the question section. Back to you.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the majority of the webinar. I think we just wanted to leave you with communication channels. So there's quite a few ways for you to be able to reach out to us, stay up to date on what's happening. So we've listed a few of these on the last slide. So our CASA News and RPAS newsletter updates are published on the news site along with media releases. And these are often further promulgated by industry associations such as AAUS, so thank you very much. There are processes also for submitting suggestions to improve rules. You can seek clarification on existing rules. So we've put the link for the improved rules up there, and I believe it will be put into or has been put into the chat. As discussed at the beginning of the session, we have provided regular updates against the roadmap items on the CASA website, so feel free to check these out. We do provide updates every 6 weeks or so. Draft policy, or sometimes calls for input, use the consultation hub, so keep an eye out for these. Today we've spoken about quite a few released or upcoming documents that are going to be put up on the consultation hub, and we genuinely welcome your views. And I'm just going to hand over to Greg, who can talk a bit more about the industry representation.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, many of the questions were asking how you can provide input into the roadmap initiatives. And there are various industry working groups as discussed today, including the AFAF, the roadmap, the vertiports, and there's also your industry association, AAUS, and its various advisory groups there to do that. These are all good avenues to provide input. Cheers.
Great. Okay, so that concludes the webinar. So we thank our presenters for their time today, including Greg's time working with us from the AAUS. So thank you to our audience for your attention and taking the time to attend, and we hope that you have found this webinar informative.